History, history. Can you see, little boy, what you mean to me? Can you see how sweet our love has long grown to be? It's time to see the happiness I feel inside of me. Knowing one thing, darling, this love will always be two lovers, history. Ain't that two lovers, history?
Welcome to the History Boys Abroad, another dose of Know Your History. If you're unfamiliar with the premise of this podcast, we invite people on within the Celtic sphere for a blether about their Celtic credentials, as well as 3 moments that are absolutely relevant in shaping their personal Celtic identity. It's heavy wanky, but it's pretty much the truth. Today's guest is 1/3 of another Celtic podcast, the 20-Minute Tims. Today's guest is Martin Melly. How you doing, Melly?
Good, thanks. Thanks very much for having me on.
So we're here to talk about Celtic. So every single person that comes on the podcast, I ask them, what's your Celtic background? Why are you a Celtic fan?
I'm probably the same as most people. My dad was a Celtic fan, and from a young age he wanted me to get into it. I wasn't as into it at first as I am now, but I just remember him talking about all the games, the Lisbon Lions. I mean, I could name that Lisbon Lions team before I'd even seen footage of the game. He'd sit me down and talked about Celtic all the time, so it's probably the same as most people. It was a family thing.
Yeah, sort of born into it, no choice.
No choice. I mean, when you see your dad talking about something that passionately, you want to learn about it, you want to know about it, so that's what it was like for me.
So when did you first start going to Celtic? When did you first get your season ticket? Rather, we're going to talk about, I think, the first game you actually went to. We'll get to that, but when did you first get a season ticket?
It wasn't until 5-6 years ago I first got a season ticket, but when I remember, I can actually pinpoint the first game. I remember when I decided, right, that's it for me with Celtic. It was 95 and they were playing Hibs in the Scottish Cup semi-final replay. The game was at Ibrox because I think we were playing at Hampden anyway, and we beat Hibs 3-1, and Willie Faulkner scored, John Collins scored an absolute peach, and Phil O'Donnell scored, and after that was it for me. But I actually thought Willie Faulkner was a good player after that game, but how mistaken I was.
So that was the season. Yeah, that was the season. Airdrie.
That was it. That was the semi-final. So once they got there, the cup final was the following month. So that was it.
Yeah. So who was your first Celtic hero?
It was Pierre Van Hooijdonk. That was back in the days where you were only allowed the 3 foreigners. But just when you seen him play, you could tell he's a class above. A bit like Dembele now, just out of this world. He's got a bit of everything. He had the shot from the free kick, the headers. He had the strength. He was just different class to me.
And he kind of came from nowhere as well. NEC Breda. It wasn't It was pre-internet days, so you didn't know anything about these guys coming in. I mean, him, Andy, Tom, you didn't know much about them before they came. So when they did come, and you always thought a foreign player would be better back then anyway. There is that mystique about a foreign player that they're automatically better than what you've already got because they've got a fancy name or they came from Bayer Leverkusen or, in Pierre's case, NEC Breda. Do you remember who scouted them?
Was it Davy Hay?
It was Davy Hay. As far as I know anyway, as far as the research goes, it was Davy Hay.
He's got some record, Davy Hay.
Aye, he did. Pierre came in very, very technically gifted, scored a variety of goals, headers, fucking tap-ins, free kicks, the lot. So I just want to ask you a couple of questions about your podcast, the 20-Minute Tims. How did that come about?
Myself, Stephen and Jamie were all good friends, so when we were meeting up, watching the games or going to the pub or going to the games, we'd talk about Celtic anyway. So we all listen to podcasts ourselves and are all fans of podcasts, so it just started for there, and Jamie just decided, why don't we just try it, and it just snowballed from there. We just bought a mic, sat in Jamie's spare room, and it went from there. It's quite weird to think it now, but that's all it really took.
How long has that been now?
We started it just after the transfer window at the start of we've been doing it over a year now, so this is our second season. So
I actually thought it was longer than that. I've been listening to it from the start, but I thought it'd been going on longer than that.
Well, maybe I'm getting my dates wrong here, but after the transfer window and with Dylan, we've just been put out the Champions League, and it's a lot easier to vent your frustrations on a podcast. So
in a pod, it's recorded for life, and everybody will know.
That's
it. So I just want to ask you about your podcast as well. What, if anything, I know your podcast is doing pretty well, going by the social media aspect of things, like what is the future for the 20-minute Tims? Have you anything? I know you're doing interviews now, which is kind of a new thing you've been doing lately, but is there anything else you're going to do in the future? I know like the 90-minute Cynic guys done like a live event, and they're sort of pushing towards doing a magazine as well now, as well as a full-blown website. Do you guys have any aspirations to do that, or is it just continuing with the three guys in the room?
We've sort of done it, the three guys in the room. We'll always stick to that for like the Monday podcast talking about the game, but with the Thursday podcast we've started trying to do different things. We've done like the match companion on big European games or cup semi-finals, but we'll start off, it was September 2015 we started actually, and we'd do the big games, but with Dylan and the team not playing well, we're getting beat, so everybody was blaming our match companion as a jinx, but we've done that. We've done a classic match companions where we just watch old games and do the same thing with that. We've done the player interviews, and we try and do things like we all individually pick the best 11 of players we've seen, and we go through that, and we've also done the worst 11 of players we've seen. So it's just try to do stuff like that to keep people interested, because when you do the best and the worst 11, you get a lot of feedback in that, because everybody's got something different. There's people from all ages listening, and some people rate some players, others don't. So just try to do something different that keeps people interested, really.
See, there is, you're probably privy to it, but there's a million, sort of, not a million, but there's a lot of football podcasts out there, and there's certainly a lot more Celtic podcasts now. Even in the last 3 or 4 months, there's new ones popping up all the time. But the one thing I liked about you guys was it was very very niche, the 20-minute window. It's a bus journey. Like, I thought that was
exactly the plan behind it, for people going to their works or just at the gym or something, because that's the same sort of times we listen to podcasts. A big influence was a podcast called the 10-minute podcast. It's just sort of 3 comedians and that get together and do it, so we took inspiration from that, but 10 minutes was far too short. We're actually called the 10-minute Tims on Libsyn, what we released the podcast on, but you couldn't get it in 10 minutes, so we just changed it to 20, and it seems to have worked out well.
Give or take 20 minutes, but as I say, it's a very niche podcast. It sort of lasts a commute for me, or if I'm going out for a run or something like that, it lasts the perfect amount of time. Like, while we're talking about podcasts, what other podcasts do you listen to? It doesn't necessarily have to be Celtic ones, specifically football ones though.
My favourite football one's the Football Ramble. That's just 4 English guys that talk about football, but it's more like the comedy side of it. It's always great. That's always one I look out for as soon as it comes out. I like the Guardian one, and the Terrace Scottish Football podcast pretty good, and I've started listening to Guillaume Balaguer. He's got one out there now. He's had interviews with Gary Neville, Juan Mata and Eddie Howe. They're a great insight into how it works in the English Premiership.
Is that not basically just ripping off Graham Hunter?
It basically is, but
I mean, it doesn't really matter if they're a listener anyway. Like, you know, the insight, as you say, is the main thing. But I haven't actually listened. I didn't even know Guillaume Balaguer had a podcast out. I never knew that until you mentioned it.
Yeah, it's the exact same idea as Graham Hunter, but I don't think Guillaume Balaguer is going to ask you for money to do it, and he doesn't foam over the guests as much as Graham Hunter.
Jizzing in his pants. Graham Hunter's like, I just can't tolerate the guy. He's just a bit of a fud, to be honest. Podcast that I enjoy, the Spanish football podcast, is good for Sid Lowe alone. The other guy that does it is insufferable. But the Revista La Liga one from Sky is excellent.
Yeah,
I don't know if you listen to that. Like, I know Sky, and they're kind of the big bad guys, but the podcast like that, Driscoll, John O'Driscoll or Terry Driscoll, I can't remember the 2 guys' names, but
Terry Gibson
and John O'Driscoll, like the rapport that they've got, the insight that they have, as well as the rundowns of the games is absolutely brilliant. So for me, those are the 2 ones that I listen to from Spain. I don't know if you know this, but there is a Spanish speaking Scottish football podcast called Rincon Escocés, which translates to Scottish Corner, and they basically, there's like 10 Spanish guys are on this podcast, and they're all just talking about Scottish football, not specifically Celtic, but just talking about Scottish football, which I thought was I thought was pretty fucking mad. I haven't listened to it yet because I don't listen to Spanish podcasts that often, but I digress. So that's good.
There's plenty of Celtic podcasts I listen to as well, so that I could.
Which ones are you? Which one are you a fan of? Like, which ones do you like download upon site?
Well, there's obviously yourself. There's the 90-minute Cynic, By the Minute as well. To be honest, if I've got nothing to listen to, I'll listen to most Celtic podcasts. It doesn't really bother me.
Yeah,
so.
There's new ones popping up all the time. As I say,
it must be one of the club with the most podcasts about. I mean, it's hard to think of another team that's got so many podcasts. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I've also thought of that in Celtic Underground. I don't know if this is true, but they say that they are the longest running football podcast in the world. So, and I could probably believe that. They're on like episode 300 or something like that. But anyway, it's getting a bit nerdy. So I just want to ask you a couple of questions before we move on to your games. Which season or which Celtic team have you connected with the most? Now, this season is obviously quite an exceptional season. We're only in February, but things are just fucking absolutely gallus. But as a Celtic fan, like, what's the team or season you've connected with most?
Well, growing up, I was growing up when I hadn't seen Celtic win the league till we stopped at 10. The 95, 90 to 97, that era, I loved the players like the Canio, Cadete, Van Hooijdonk. The football they used to play was brilliant. I used to watch the end of season videos till I knew every word to it, but they just never won anything. And then 98, when we stopped at 10, was more relief than anything else. And then a day later, Wim Janssen goes. So it wasn't until Martin O'Neill came in, and that was the team that got it for me. I mean, he came in, he brought in Sutton, Lennon, Thompson, and they just seemed to get at the players. Lambert, Larsson just upped their game. Everything seemed to click, and I'd never seen a Celtic team dominate like that. They just won and just bullied teams. They were never scared of them. They finally got it together in Europe and got a good run in Europe. So it was the Martin O'Neill team that really done it for me.
Like, a question I'm asking people regularly on this podcast and my pals, like, there is a bit of a narrative about this Brendan Rodgers side, like echoing the Martin O'Neill side. You saying we were doing teams, we were bullying teams. Like, teams don't even, like, you were at the game today and you seen like Dembele. He's 20 years old. People are bouncing off him. He's a fucking pain in the arse for the defence. Do you think there is a comparison, like a genuine comparison between O'Neill's team and what Rodgers has now?
Oh, it's quite incredible how similar it is. I mean, to come in from John Barnes and Ronnie Dyler to now, like, there was only a couple of players brought in. Like, even sometimes we are playing with one player different from last season, and the turnaround is incredible. It just shows you what difference a manager that the teams respect, what a difference it makes. It's unbelievable. Like, just bringing in Dembele, you could compare him to Sutton, you can compare Sinclair to Thompson, you could maybe compare Toure to Valhaeren. Just, there seems to be very similar, and there's just an aura about these two managers as well. They're the two best managers I've seen at Celtic Park.
So what does it come down to then? Like, what's the magic trick? Like, what's the substance?
It's the manager. It's everything to do with the manager. I'm convinced about it. If you get in a good manager that the fans respect, the players respect, and the board have pushed to get, everything comes together. I done an interview with Mark Burchill, and I was asking him about Venglos, and he said the senior players didn't respect him. They weren't playing properly. Then Barnes came in, he said they was trying to overcoach the senior players and they weren't into it and they just wanted them out, and he says once the players want you out, you've got no chance. And it was a bit similar to Dyler, but once you get a guy like Martin O'Neill or Brendan Rodgers coming in, you know he's the boss. When he talks, you listen. He's got pedigree behind him. I'm convinced it's all to do with the manager.
And when you see people like Scott Brown, and I've regularly slagged Scott Brown, like, with like, just like, it was absolutely just at the time. People like Armstrong, like in the summer, Armstrong could have walked, nobody would have batted an eyelid. Forrest, who got injured today, but It just seems like I don't know if you saw at the game today when Armstrong gets subbed. Brendan grabbed him before he even got a chance to get to the dugout and like spoke to him for about 30 seconds, 40 seconds, like in his ear, clearly like giving him advice. And it's not something I've ever noticed before watching. And as you say, it does seem to be the manager. There is some sort of like sorcery behind. It does seem to be that the manager does command the respect, but
yeah, he knows what he's doing. There was a point during the game as well at the start where he called over Armstrong and he was clearly giving him tactical instructions. Like, for how good Martin O'Neill was as a manager, he wasn't a tactician, but how many times has Brendan Rodgers changed something, changed formation, made a substitution, and it changes the whole way the game pans out, and it always works out for us. So he knows what he's doing in every aspect of the game.
He does seem very, very clued up. He knows what he wants, and the other thing that kind of stands out about Brendan Rodgers, he's continually trying to improve. Like the whole thing about the pitch, and we're on this mad, ridiculous run, and he's like, even today I was watching the press conference from, I think it must have been yesterday, and he's still talking about the pitch, how it's really important, and this and that, and he's like continually trying to improve players. But I want to ask you a couple of questions about current Celtic. Like Beaton, what do you think about Beaton as a player? Like, do you feel that Beaton has progressed as a player since he's came to Celtic? Now, I kind of realised today it's still the same Beaton that came like 3 years ago. Whenever he arrived, it's still the same Beaton. But I don't feel that he's progressed. What do you think?
Yeah, the guy's a source of frustration for me because I think we've seen he can be good, but I just don't think he's suited to the way Rodgers playing. Since he's came back in. Since the January window, he's been the one sitting in Brown's move further forward, and Brown was playing excellent from the start of the season, sitting in that deep position. But I don't know what Beaton's done to get his place back, because I just don't see it. Maybe it's with the injuries to Rogic and Armstrong, but he was better today. Today was his best game he's had since he got back, to be fair. But if you take him out of the team, I don't think you necessarily will miss him. You could put in McGregor, you could put in Armstrong, Henderson. I don't think he does enough to warrant a place, especially how the level of quality in the teams went up. I don't think he's going to be at that level next season.
I think the chat is that Bhoys will be his, I guess, long-term replacement. And Rodgers said in the press conference that I watched earlier that Bhoys is probably about 2 weeks away from being in the match squad. He's played 60 minutes for the development squad, then he played 90 minutes the other night. So he's like, I think he said he's going to get another 90 minutes, then he's going to be involved with the match day squad. So we may see him, but Brendan seems to quite like Beaton, and I don't know if that's just because it's by default and there's no one else around to play there with Armstrong being injured. But for me, I just don't feel that Beaton has progressed as a player. Initially he was excellent, but he's just, I don't know if he was excellent. Maybe hindsight, I'm thinking he wasn't that good. I just feel that he's kind of stagnating, and I do think players like him, players like Gary Mackay-Steven, who obviously he came on as a sub today against Hamilton, but in the first, it took him about half an hour to really even get a touch of the ball, and then a couple of nice moves in the second half sort of redeemed him. But I just see these players as absolute stopgap players. In the summer, these guys are going to be sold.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Mackay-Steven, I'm not a fan of him either. He's like a wee boy playing out there, but he's 26 years old. He's not going to get any better. He's barely even a squad player. I mean, he did absolutely nothing really to come on today. He's had enough chances, but under Rodgers, I'm scared to write off players, because in January I'd have said get Beaton and Boyata out, but the two of them have started every game since. And I was actually listening back to your Paul Elliott episode the other day, and it's the same for us, the amount of players we wrote off. But you and Graham were talking about Scott Brown, what does he offer, like slated every single player. I don't blame you, I'd done the same thing at the time, but the turnaround from last season to that game and so many players is incredible. But I think we've got to a point now where he'll pretty much know the ones he wants to keep, and he knows the good players, and we're just going to add quality, and it'll leave behind your likes of your Mackay-Stevens.
I think it's a case of perseverance until the summer, and Brendan's not even been here. I think Brendan arrived in, I call him by his first name, Brendan, but Brendan Rodgers, but he arrived in like July, June. He's been the manager, like undertaking like matches in the league domestically, like serious matches for about 5 or 6 months. It's not a long time, but I think players like Mackay-Steven, maybe even Henderson, players like Beaton, they're just sort of there. So he has had a full look at them. Come the summer, out they go. Hopefully get some money for them. And I agree with Boyata, but did you see, like, Boyata was okay in the end. His first touch today, do you remember it?
I was actually meeting somebody to give them a ticket, so I missed the start of the first couple of minutes of the game, unfortunately.
He just passed the ball out the pitch in the first 44 seconds. 40, I counted it. I didn't count it, it was on the screen. 44 seconds, the ball directly out the pitch.
For his improvement since he's came in is good, but he's only improved from how bad he's been.
Yeah.
Going into next season, we need to improve upon the players we've got, and I definitely think we need another centre half, because I still prefer Simonovic and Sviatchenko, but he seems to prefer Boyata right now. But I still don't think you can have him in the Champions League, because he makes 1 or 2 mistakes a game and you get punished for them in Europe, which you don't in Scotland.
See, Brendan said, I don't know if you've access to Celtic TV, but Glenn Driscoll said that Simunovic is fully fit. The whole thing about him, 1 game in, 1 game out, 1 game in, he's fully fit in his knees, which were the initial problem when we first signed him, and had that whole thing where he wasn't he was basically wasn't even a squad player for a while, but that injury has subsided, but he's carrying a shoulder injury just now, which I don't really know how much I buy into that, because he should have been playing today. But I do agree that Simunovic and Sviatchenko going forward, Sviatchenko's pretty decent, Simunovic is pretty decent. I do think Boyata, from what he's shown, he is worthy of keeping. If it continues, and a similar consistency until the summer, then I have no qualms keeping him. But I think with a lot of these positions, we could do with a slight upgrade. Beaton as a prime example. Gary Mackay-Steven, who's a squad player, we could do with an upgrade on a squad player. However, we could talk all day about fucking the current Celtic squad, man. It's an interesting time to be a Celtic fan. But I want to ask you about the games that you've chosen. So essentially, I've asked you to come on this podcast because when I've listened to your podcast, I've noticed that you've got a bit of an encyclopedic knowledge about Celtic's history, and you sort of remember things more than the average Celtic fan would remember. So I thought I would ask you to come on. And also, we've spoken privately about you've contributed towards other podcasts we've done, like sending in stories and stuff. So I want to ask you about your first subtle moment that's relevant only to you.
Well, it's my first game at Celtic Park. When I first started going to the games, it was a season at Hampden. So the following season, it was the 10th of March 96. It was Dundee United in the Scottish Cup quarter-finals, and Dundee United get a penalty, went ahead, Owen Coyle misses it but scores the rebound, and I was sitting there with my dad thinking, this is my first game and Celtic are going to lose. But he said it'll be okay, and then Pierre steps up the last minute, gets a header, 1 each ink replay, and then a minute later Andy Tom goes through and buries it 2-1, and I'd never felt anything like it before. My dad's hugging these random people and everybody's jumping about, and then I just made it for me. I was like, this is what I want. This is what I want for the rest of my life.
This is McNamara. Donnelly takes over. Hustled there by Coyle. With McNamara again. Fouled by Malpass. It's a free kick to Celtic. Celtic trying desperately to save this match. Then by McNamara. Defence, and Hoyland, he times his jump brilliantly and meets the ball solidly and gets the goal that's so vital to Celtic, it's so important. Well, the scoop was there for Van Hooydonk, never in the match, and the man who has saved the day, it would appear, for Celtic. And now this may be a winner. Here's Andreas Tom. He's done it! 90 minutes are up. Andreas Tom handle here. Wells couldn't get them. Maxwell got a touch, but couldn't keep it out. You know, Owen Powell just a little bit careless, tries to pass across the face of his defence. So look at Andreas Tom's got the pace to go in there, keep his composure and finish so brilliantly. And what a rest, Jack, this has been for Celtic.
The Scottish Cup quarter-final, 10th of March 1996, Celtic 2, Dundee United 1. Do you remember the goals? Have you watched the goals back this week?
Yeah. I've interviewed Andreas Tom recently, and he obviously scores the winner. So I was wanting to ask him about that. So I'd watched it a few weeks ago, and I watched it again last night, and I can still remember it vividly. Anyway, I remember where I was sitting. It was just a great. The pitch was an absolute disgrace. If Brendan Rodgers seen that pitch, he would not be happy in the slightest.
Yeah, the finish as well. Like, I think it was Owen Coyle that actually gives the ball to Andreas Tom, like Andy Tom, and then he runs up the pitch and scores. Pretty decent finish. In fact, to be honest, both goals were very good finishes. I think the first one is from a McNamara free kick.
It's a free kick.
It's a free kick, and it's McNamara. I think it's McNamara anyway. Gets absolutely halved, close to the, I don't know, like halfway up the pitch bit near the throwing line, and he takes the free kick, and Pierre jumps up with the big looping header that he done quite often, and then Andy Tom breaks up the park and scores that. As you say, we're talking 90 seconds in between both goals after going a goal down, and the rest was history. This was the season of George Cadet, is that correct?
Yeah, well, he couldn't play in this game because his registration got delayed somehow. I don't know how that happened. There must have been somebody working behind the scenes sorting that out.
Well, you're kind of leading me nicely into what I'm about to ask. So we know that how all that stuff goes. I don't even want to mention it, but this is the games. When we signed him, there was no transfer window, so we signed him, and he was withheld for about 5 weeks maybe. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 games played in the 5-week window. 2 of those games we drew 0-0. Or no, we drew, I think it was 1 each, and then we drew 0-0. I think it was, I can't even remember who it was we were playing.
I think maybe draw with Hearts maybe in Kilmarnock. I can't quite remember.
Let me have a wee squint here. I've actually got my old trusty book in front of me here. We drew with Rangers 1 each, in Motherwell 0-0. I think that's what it was. But do you feel that, like, this was me asking the same question to Gilly, the guy that I do the other the regular History Boys Abroad podcast, the regular History Boys Abroad podcast with? Do you feel that if Cadeti was playing, it could have made a difference, and we could have had a better chance of winning the league that season?
100%. I think it's the reason we didn't win the league. The guy was frightening. For as much as I loved Pierre Van Hooijdonk, I think Cadet is up there with Larson with the best finishers I'd seen. Just that first goal he scored when he comes on, like, as again, you didn't know much about this guy when he comes in, but you just seen that touch of quality. I think, was it 35 goals in 37 games or something?
Yeah. He
ended up with. I mean, we went through in this game to the semi-final. We played Rangers. I'm sure it was on Easter Sunday, and we get beat 2-1. It was 2-0, and then Pierre scored. But Cadet couldn't play in that game because he hadn't been registered in time. I mean, the guy would have made such a difference, and we didn't finish that far behind. So I'm sure Jim Farry's done his job perfectly well.
Spinning in his grave. But to tell you, we finished that season on 83 points, and the Huns had 87. So, I mean,
see, it's one win against them. It's turning one of those draws into losses, because we drew a lot of games back then.
Yeah,
just missed that killer instinct up front. Our defence wasn't great, but we could always outscore teams, and with Cadet in the team, I'm sure we would have done that.
So with this season, we're talking about Tommy Burns being in charge, and one of the overriding memories of Tommy Burns as a manager with Celtic was the style of football that was employed. Now, people call it the Celtic way, which it can be the Celtic way, or it can just be nice, attractive football. However, do you think that this was a genuine, very good attacking football side that was being played, attacking football side that was playing this season?
Would people talk about the Celtic way? This is the way I remember it. Tosh McKinley and Jackie McNamara down the fullbacks. See the amount of goals they set up, the assists they got, the crosses they put in. You'd Van Hooijdonk, you'd Cadet, you'd Andy Tom. most of the goals we scored were from crosses, and some of the interplay as well. I mean, I see Paul McStay was winding down then, but some of his passes through, and John Collins was a great player as well. Simon Donnelly was coming through as well. There was a video called On Target, an end of season one I mentioned earlier, and I just used to watch it, and it was absolutely brilliant. It was the House of Pain Jump was the soundtrack song to it, and I used to watch it, and we never won anything, but I watched it all the time. The football was sensational.
Fanatic, mate. So the team, just to go over the team of that day that played in the game that we're talking about, your first game at Celtic Park, which was the Scottish Cup quarter-final. Gordon Marshall, McNamara, Hughes, O'Neill, McKinley, Donnelly, Grant, McStay, McLaughlin, Van Hooijdonk, Tom, and on the bench we had Mackay and Bonner. O'Donnell came on, and I can't see anyone else coming on, but yeah, it was a good game. I guess it was a good game to be your first introduction to Celtic Park. And as I say, I do believe that Cadete would have made a difference in this game. This is the season that Pierre scores about 32 goals. And the next closest scorer to him was John Collins and also Andy Tom. They scored 12 goals apiece, and Pierre was out there with 32. I want to ask you, the Three Amigos. Now, Celtic were kind of famous for having a very good attacking force during this period that we're talking about. The defence wasn't as great as it could have been. Would you swap who would you swap, and if so, who would you swap any of the Three Amigos for Forster or Boric? So who, if possible?
If I just pick one of them and take them out?
Well, would you, if you had the chance to swap one of them for a Forster or Boric, or would you not choose it at all? And if you did, who would it be?
I don't think I'd choose it at all. Gordon Marshall was the bane of my life back then. The guy was terrible. He was never a Celtic goalkeeper in his life, but the three of them made it. I always remember the game at Kilmarnock away when the first time the three of them and Andy Tom were on the pitch. It's one of the games that it's just a random league game, but Celtic fans remember it. The pictures of the three of them sitting with the bumblebee after it celebrating, that lives on. So I'd just leave the three of them in that team and let them go.
See, I opted to swap Di Canio out for Forster because Di Canio was more of a flair player. Cadete offered more, Van Hooijdonk offered more as well. But yeah, so we'll move on to your next game, Melly. The next game is a game that I've actually been thinking about a lot lately, before we'd even spoken, which was...
I was hoping you'd do a podcast on this game, actually, but...
Sorry?
I'm happy to talk. I was hoping you would do a podcast on this game. It seems like the type of game you'd pick out.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I have actually written that in my notes, that it's the sort of game that I'd like to do a podcast on. Like, Valencia, to me, represent a team that I would love to get in Europe. You know, they're a big team, but they're not the biggest team in the country. They're a one-team city, but they're not the biggest. Again, they're not the biggest team in the country. They've got quite a decent history, but they're definitely beatable. Today, I think they actually lost today. They were playing Alaves. I think they lost today, but they beat Real Madrid the other day. But to talk about current stuff, so the game we're going to talk about is Celtic Valencia 1-0 at Celtic Park. I think this was the second leg. Penalties, extra time. Tell us about this game.
Well, we'd lost 1-0 in Valencia, and this was strange because this is in December, but we'd played in the Champions League that year. That was the first year we'd been in it. We beat Ajax in the qualifier, then played Juve, Porto and Rosenborg, but we just missed out because we didn't get any points away from home, so you're disappointed. But it's strange to think that we played the full Champions League 6 games, and then this game was at the start of December, so I'd never seen Celtic in Europe after Christmas before. And then when we go out the Champions League getting so close, you think, right, we can beat teams. We've just beat Juventus. I mean, I love my Italian football, my Spanish football. We just beat Juve. I thought that's one of the best things ever. Then you think, right, go into this draw and we get Valencia, the team that had been in the Champions League final the previous 2 seasons. Now, it's a tough game, but I loved Spanish football, and Valencia were one of my favourite teams. Like, they had Canizares, Ayala, Vicente, Aymar Carew. I love John Carew, so I was happy to see these guys, but you're thinking, give us a chance in this game. But to go up and beat them, only get beat 1-0 away, we could have actually got an away goal, but to take them back to Parkhead and Bobo Baldy against John Carew was one of the best duels I've ever seen in a football match. Two giants going at it. It was absolutely brilliant.
It's funny you should say that. I was talking to Gilly, the other guy I do the podcast with regularly, and the thing that he mentioned about the game is like it was a battle. Carew versus Baldy was a fucking ding dong battle, which I don't seem to remember, but yeah, I'll take his word for it. So Celtic 1-0. The team for that day is Douglas, Baldy, Mjällby, Valharin, Petrov, Lambert, Lennon, Moravchik, who got subbed for Silla, Peta, subbed for Thompson, Larson, Sutton, and then because the game goes to extra time, Silla comes off and Hartson comes on. But I think with this game, like, does Larson not miss a penalty?
Yeah, but Larson scores just before half time, and one of my favourite players was Henry, but this goal was like one of Henry's goals. The ball breaks to him and he just curls it right into the far corner.
It's the way that he opens up his body, like on that kind of similar to the sort of position where Dembele scored today, although a little bit more in the box, in the way he sort of like arcs his back and opens up his body and he curls it into the corner. We're talking about Canizares here, we're not talking about fucking Rab Douglas or any fucking shitey goalkeeper. It was a fantastic finish.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only guy possibly on the pitch that could have scored that. I mean, there was a lot of good players on that pitch, but it's just Larson. See, when you think back now, take Dembele out it, but recently we've had such a dearth of good strikers, and to think I grew up watching a guy like Henrik Larsson, the guy was genuinely world class, and every time he was in your team you think, no matter who you're playing, whether it's Juventus, Valencia, we've got Larsson, we've got a chance, and that's what he brought to us. It was just a great time to be a Celtic fan. I mean, Rafa Benitez was the Valencia manager, Champions League finalists, and they're coming to Celtic Park and we're beating them. It was just brilliant.
I was hoping that the gods might smile on us and give us a half reasonable draw. There we are, paired against Valencia, who'd been in the Champions League final for the previous 2 years. And the atmosphere that evening at Celtic Park was something I will never forget. And we eventually lost on penalties, but it was an incredible effort all round by everyone. I'm talking about the players and I'm talking about the crowd. And a night I'll never forget here.
Well, this is a great move by Peta. Is he going all the way? Can he lay it out? He does. And it's across and just away. Canizares. How on earth did he miss it? The best chance of the night. And I have to say, maybe last season, a couple of seasons ago, that would have been 100% certain in the back of the net. Great move by Peta. And look at that. It was Ayala who went back there. Pellegrino away with it. Not the best of clearances though. There's a chance. And it's there! Celtic have scored one chance and he picks it up. Henrik Larsson, deep into stoppage time, put Celtic in the lead. They deserved that. They've missed two chances. Perhaps even better chances than that, but he puts it away when necessary.
In the second half there were more chances, but the boys just couldn't convert them. It was the same story in extra time, so ultimately it came to the lottery that is the penalty shootout.
And Canizares, look at the gamesmanship here, walking up and down, pacing up and down, and standing up. Wonderfully, he's been coached into doing this sort of thing at penalties. Paul Lambert running up to take this. 1-0. Celtic have the advantage. Well, up he comes against Rab Douglas, who defied them in that first game. Well, it's one of the poorest players in the park. Our favourite, John Carew. The crowd are not helping him, as you might well expect. Here he comes. And he's done it, though. I have to say, slickly taken penalty kick, and he remained very cool. Alan Thompson with that left foot of his. Made it look easy. Straight in. Yeah. No deviation. I think he let the goalkeeper do all the work. I think it's Vicente who's about to take this. Very good player. But can he survive this one? This being saved by Douglas. A half-hearted penalty kick, and the goalkeeper gets down behind it. Larson now. Oh, he's missed. Good heavens, you would have bet on him putting it away there. Valencia have been let off the hook. There's some record if he can save a second one. Douglas again this time. He is beaten. And so we're now back to level. Now here's Petrov. I'll bet you he can hardly believe that Henrik Larsson missed that one. And he can barely look. Well, you can hardly blame him either, can you? Stilian Petrov. Against Canizares. Well, where did that end up? Good heavens. Petrov, you would have bet on again. Well, they got to do it. Well, they put it away, and it was done very calmly. The advantage swinging Valencia's way. Chris Sutton now with an awesome responsibility on his shoulders. It just went in. Just sneaked in. Now that could be very, very vital, because the next penalty could be the winning and the losing. Argentinian international. Well, he's trying to look calm about it, but also important. It's been saved. Celtic are back in it again. It's quite incredible. Well, I think the emphasis is now on Celtic. I think probably psychologically they've got it. They've come back from the dead. Hartson now. Well, for a moment I thought that was over the bar.
Well, I couldn't tell you actually because I wasn't watching it, but right in the top corner and ice cool from John Hartson, and that's advantage Celtic.
Valencia have got to score this one. And yet again, another Argentinian. As I said, this is the man wanted by Martin O'Neill, Pellegrino. Left-footed player. Yes, he slotted that one in confidently. He was under tremendous pressure, I have to say. And it's the Belgian international this time, Yus Valhaeren. Oh, he saved it! Valhaeren, as that was pushed to the side, across went Canizares and is being retaken. It's being retaken. And he's got a second chance at it. And he saved it again, would you believe? They can hardly credit it. 2 bites at it. And now here it's Mista. Mista scored the equaliser at the weekend. Well, I don't think there's been such a dramatic ending at Celtic Park in many, many years. Referee getting Robert Douglas back. Mista with it. That's it! Valencia
the thing that is worth mentioning here is that the season before that you just alluded to, they played Bayern Munich in the Champions League final and lost. It might have even been penalties. I think it was Mendieta that scored in the Champions League final the year before, and this was when Bayern had like your Stefan Effenberg and fucking the rest of the players that they had at that point. I can't remember half of them, but they were up against a very good Bayern, but they gave a very good account of themselves. And the season that we're talking about, which I just want to confirm, is 2001-2002 season.
Yep.
They won the La Liga that season. Do you know that?
How did they go on to win it? Because it was the Galacticos that beat them the first Champions League final. That was when Steve McManaman scored, wasn't it?
That's right.
So it wasn't as if they were a bad team then to get to the final again. I mean, you can't name many great teams right now that get to 2 finals in a row, and Valencia were doing it. I mean, it's unbelievable to think that we went up against them, and when it goes to penalties, people say it's a lottery, but it's not. It's about composure, it's about quality, and we had the chance to go 3-1 ahead and we just didn't take it, and I think that's when it all changed.
To tell you some of the players that you've mentioned, so we have Canizares, Ayala, Pellegrino, Carboni, Djukic, Vicente, Pablo Aimar. Now, I want to ask you about Pablo Aimar. Do you remember anything about him in this match?
Not in this match specifically, but I always used to watch the Spanish football on Sky Sports and played Football Manager, so I knew him from before his time in Argentina, and he was just a great player. One of those guys that you just wish, I kind of wish he played in England, or he'd never come to Celtic, just so you could see more of him, because he was just top quality. Yeah.
So you say you watch Spanish football. Are you watching it on a regular basis every week currently, or do you? And you said that you listen to the podcast. So, like, do you have a specific team that you follow in Spain?
I don't have a specific team. I mean, I like Valencia always because I've liked their strip. I like the black away strips, but I don't specifically follow a team. I like watching Barcelona. It just depends who the good team to watch is. I'll not say I'm a Barcelona fan or a Madrid fan. I love Gareth Bale as well, so I love watching him. It's just, I used to love Real Sociedad when Xabi Alonso was there. He was always my favourite player. I used to always say to my mate Tony, watch out for this Xabi Alonso, and then he signed for Liverpool and everybody could see what a player he was. He was one of my favourite ever players.
Yeah, he wasn't too Xabi. Last night I was watching on regular TV here. I don't have Sky or anything, but regular TV, every single Friday they show a La Liga match. Every Friday there's a game on. Last night was Las Palmas versus Sociedad. I don't know if you've been following Spanish football like this like very, very currently, but Las Palmas, who have started very, very well, have taken a bit of a dip, but they have like Hesse up front with
I've got
Boateng.
Kevin Prince, that goal they scored earlier in the season where they pass it out from defence and then they get the overhead kick. That's the goal of the season in Spain so far.
Like, it's they are a kind of a very, very small team from obviously an island that's closer to South Africa than it is to some parts in Spain. But the game last night was quite good. It was very, very, very open, very attacking. There was so many chances from the get-go. There was almost like no defence employed. And they were just going at it. But Sociedad came away with the win. And Sociedad are actually doing really well this season. Carlos Vela's doing quite well. Xavi Prieto scored the goal last night. And the guy who's in charge of Sociedad now is that Eusebio Cristobal. He was the guy, I think he was a coach under Pep with Barca. So he played for Barca. So he's from that school of Barcelona players, you know, the La Masia and all that sort of stuff. You know, Barcelona are a very incestual club where they like to bring players back because they understand it. So the chat is now, and they won last night, like Sociedad won in Las Palmas, which is kind of a big deal. And they're pushing for a Champions League, they're not going to get a Champions League spot, but they're pushing for Europe at least. The chat is he's going to be going to Barca come the summer.
No, I thought San Pauli might get the shout, but they seem to do it when there's a lot of talk here how it might be Pele, the Spurs manager, and I'm like, they don't usually do that. They usually go for somebody in Spain that knows the league or somebody that's been through their system. They've got a good way of doing it, Barcelona. They're obviously a unique team, but it's good to see like Las Palmas as well. Like teams, mid-table teams, at least they're going for games and entertaining fans on a weekly basis instead of just trying to shut up shop and scrape a 1-0 or not get beat by too many. It's great to watch teams like that.
They were very cavalier last night in their approach. As I say, it was just attack. Both teams at it for the whole entire 90 minutes. It was a great game of football to watch. From the podcast we were both speaking about, I listened to the Spanish football podcast, I listened to the Revista de la Liga podcast, and I kind of follow Spanish media because I live in Spain. I haven't seen Pellegrino mentioned. I heard Koeman's name. He's the only one that's outside of Spain. The other names are Ernesto Valverde, who's at Bilbao, because Bilbao are not doing massively well, but I think he was involved with Barca again, very incestual. He was involved with them in the past. Cristobal, Eusebio, who's at Sociedad, and Sampaoli. Now, Sampaoli is a very, very interesting guy. Do you know about him when he was at Chile and stuff like that?
Not as much as you'll probably know, but I know how he just plays the game and how it's all interchange and pressing and all that. And it's hard to pick out a formation he plays because he's so many attacking players, and he's maybe just got Nzonzi sitting. Again, it's great to watch. He's transformed Nasri this season as well.
Aye. Do you know, I don't know if you know about the guy that they've got as the sporting director, a guy called Carlos Monchi. Have you heard of him?
Is he still there? Did he not leave?
No, he's still there. I think in my Champ Manager game he left me. I think I actually kicked him out in my Champ Manager save, but he's still currently there. I think Sid Lowe's done interviews with him very recently. In fact, Sid Lowe's up and down to Sevilla. I think he interviewed Nzonzi this week. I think it's a big interview with Nzonzi, and he's interviewed Nasri recently. But Monchi's still there, and the philosophy with Sevilla is to bring in players that are clearly talented, clearly like have something. Your Nasri's, your Jovetic. Jovetic is doing extremely well for Sevilla just now, bringing in these players, and they get them on loan, and they sort of give them a little bit of love and a little bit of attention, make them the centre of attention, and then they go on and they do very, very well. So we're talking today, this is Saturday night, Sevilla and Betis played in the derby today in Betis. Now that's a massive, massive derby to anyone within Seville. Did you listen to the Spanish football podcast this week, the one from yesterday?
No.
They recorded it in a train station on a mobile phone. I was just like, for fuck's sake, you're asking for money for this.
They do it in his cars and that.
I know. I'm just like you're asking for money, but you're in a fucking... Anyway, they were saying that Sid Lowe was down for the Leicester match, but the local Seville fans were just like, we don't give a fuck about Leicester. We're more interested in the derby against Betis, and Betis aren't doing very, very well. They're changing managers more, not as frequently as Valencia, but they're changing managers quite frequently. But the derby down in Seville was a massive, massive thing, and Seville won it today. So they're still pushing Real Madrid. Obviously, Real Madrid lost on Wednesday against Valencia, and Real Madrid play tomorrow. So it's a very, very open league here. I want to ask you, Melly, we're going on a mad pure tangent here about fucking European football. What's your favourite league to watch?
It would be the Spanish. It's the easiest to watch over here. But I went to the Paris Saint-Germain Monaco game recently, and French football's looking good this season. I mean, you've got PSG, Monaco look absolutely brilliant going forward. Nice are up there with Balotelli, and you've got Lyon, Marseille. There's a lot of good teams in that league this year, considering Paris Saint-Germain have romped it recently. So I still like to watch my Italian football, but some of the games can be boring. But I grew up watching the Gazzetta Italian, so I've always got a place for that in my heart.
You and me both. I grew up watching Football Italia with James Richardson when he had hair, and he's sitting in those fucking cafes in the plazas and with a fucking cupcake and a coffee and an open copy of the newspaper. But yeah, for me, obviously watching Spanish football, I kind of have a bit of a beef with English football since I've moved here, and I'm watching Spanish football as much as I can. Currently in the background, Rayo Vallecano, who have Miku, are playing Getafe, who have Skepovic, and it's 0-0. This is a Madrid derby, by the way. The two of them are on in the background just now. However, we've kind of tangentially walked into a big European football podcast thing here, so let's move on. So we were talking about the Valencia game, extremely important in your Celtic life.
Yeah, it was just, when it goes to penalties, I'd never heard Parkhead so loud. Everybody was jeering every Valencia penalty and waving flags, just anything to put them off. And it went from the loudest thing I've ever heard in Parkhead to when Valencia scored, just pure silence. It's something that has always stayed with me, just that 1 second later and it's just total silence and everybody's like, ah. But we went ahead, Lambert and Thompson. To be fair to Rab Douglas, over these 2 games, he was absolutely brilliant. He saved 2 penalties and he made a lot of good stops, but the third penalty, Larsson steps up, we're 2-1 ahead and he skies it over the bar. I think it's not going to be a night when Larsson misses a penalty.
This kind of feeds into my next question to tie in with today, with Dembele's penalty. Who's the best penalty taker you've ever seen at Celtic?
Dembele.
Has to be.
Already. Yeah. Larsson missed a fair few, and then you'd have Sutton taking them. Hartson was good, but Dembele, bar the one in Barcelona, which we would have lost that game anyway, but even going back to the Astana game, the pressure on a just turned 20-year-old boy and he steps up and slots that away, the guy's exceptional.
The Astana game it was interesting because up to that point a lot of fans were very sceptical of him, bearing in mind the guy's 19 or 20, whatever he was. A lot of people didn't really understand what we had, and I openly admit that I was one of them. I do believe in giving players, especially young players, a chance to come in and prove himself. but when he stepped up and secured that to put us through, it was amazing. And I've racked my brain to think about penalty takers and Dembele's. It makes it look very, very easy. I want to ask you another question about the Valencia game before we move on to your final game, Melly. A lot of chat about, I think it was the Manchester City game at home this season in October, whenever it was. There was a chat about the atmosphere was just like the best atmosphere. I know that, I think you were there. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So people compared the atmosphere with that game with the atmosphere in the Valencia game. Like can you compare them?
There were two absolutely brilliant games. It's just the Man City game's a bit different because the Valencia game was so intense. Like Moravcik went through and had a great chance and he skied it over, and it was getting a bit restless. You're thinking, oh, come on, but Larsson scored just before half time, and then the second half again was tense, whereas the Man City game was, you're thinking, I went into this season of Champions League thinking, if we get a point or two, I'll be delighted, because that's a group of death. From these players last season to what they've achieved getting in here is brilliant. That's enough for me this season. But I just didn't think we'd be able to win a game. It turns out we didn't, but the Man City game just changed everything for me under Rodgers. I just thought, this guy and this team, there's something special happening here, because to go in a lead after a couple of minutes and then to be pegged back, to go back in front, and you're thinking, these players are confident, they can do it, and the crowd was brilliant, everything about it was great. They're the two best atmospheres I've ever been at in my life.
So would you say that this Valencia game was the first glimpse of what Martin Melly could do for Celtic in Europe? Now 2001, 2002, it's like his second season, I think, and it's pre-Seville. Was this like the first real glimpse of what he could do for us?
I think so. The Champions League performances, I mean, we won our 3 home games, and what was a tough group against teams that were Champions League stalwarts. They were in it. Rosenborg qualified how many years in a row for the Champions League? Porto are a great team. Juve are one of the all-time greats. So to come up against Valencia, who are the Champions League finalists, and to be put out unluckily on penalties. I mean, Josval Haring got 2 attempts to take his penalty and missed them both. It's just one of the things that we were out, but you could still hold your head high and just look forward to the next season and think, we'll go again.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, Valencia were no mugs. The season before, they were Champions League finalists. The season we're talking about, they win La Liga with Rafa Benitez in charge, and with all those players that we mentioned. But so the final game, Melly, that's very important to yourself is 3rd of October 2007. It's quite an interesting game. What's your overriding memory of this match? Celtic 2, AC Milan 1.
It was myself and Tony that were at the game, and AC Milan were my team growing up. Watching the Italian football, I loved the George Weah, Boban, Maldini. That was, I had the Milan strip, the Lotto one. That was my team. So seeing them up close, and at that time, that they'd won the Champions League the previous year, they'd put us out on the way. They put us out on the way. So to see that team up close, and the players in that team, I mean, Nesta, Gattuso, Pirlo, Seedorf, Kaká and Zaga, it's just great player after great player. And to think Celtic are going up against them with, when I look back at it, the team isn't that good, it's pretty awful, but to go up against them and give them a game again, it was unbelievable. It was another great atmosphere. It was a horrible wet night, and I worked in a supermarket at the time. I had to phone in sick because I was meant to be working back shift, so it was a great night.
Bad ball in by Hartley, real indecision, and it's smuggled in by the captain. Step up Stephen McManus to give Celtic the lead against AC Milan. It's a scoreline to savour. Celtic 1, AC Milan 0.
Well, at long last, Paul Hartley gets a terrific ball into the box. It's a beautiful height. Nicked on at the front post by Donati, I think. Dida comes all the way. Donati helps it on. McManus round the back.
It's back with Milan. It's relentless at the moment.
Okay, that's what Celtic needed. Boris should be in no hurry to take the goal kick. What was he given?
Well, I think he has given a penalty kick against Celtic.
That must be for holding. Yeah, dear oh dear.
Disbelief around Celtic Park. Kaká
the Champions League top scorer last season against Boruc. And it's Milan who level it up through Kaka. Killen gives chase. Jankulovski, who's actually helped Celtic by getting it to the feet of Shunsuke Nakamura. Nakamura, here's Scott Brown, teed up here for Caldwell, saved by Dina, should be on there, it is McDonald for Celtic! They look to have grabbed the win where it didn't look possible. Scott McDonald, his first game here at Parkhead in the Champions League, his first goal, and Milan are on their knees.
Well, you said he had covered every blade of grass, and he had, Bill, without getting any reward until now, and now he gets the biggest.
Do you remember who was playing right back for Celtic that night?
Doumbé, Jean-Pierre Doumbé.
Jean-Pierre Doumbé. So the team that night was Boruc, Doumbé, Caldwell, McManus, Naylor, McGeady. Nakamura was on the bench for some reason. Hartley, Donati, Jarosik, who's a player that's quite interesting. Killen comes off the bench for Jarosik. Scott Brown and Scott McDonald. Now the score is 2-1. Kaka at one point was quite easily the best player on the planet. We're talking pre-Messi, pre-Ronaldo. Saying Ronaldinho's kind of sniffing around, but Kaka...
Well, he's the last guy to win it before they two, wasn't he?
Aye, he was the last guy to win it before they two. The season before this, Kaka was the top goal scorer in the Champions League.
It was his goal that put us out the previous year, wasn't it?
So the game was 2-1. McManus scored 6-2 in 62nd minute, and then Kaka gets the penalty and the jeers and all that sort of start.
That was Lee Naylor giving him away. Like, oh, what are you doing? He just pulls the guy down for no reason. It was ridiculous defending.
When you're watching it back, you're like, what's it for? Like, you're like, what the fuck? Like what's going on? And then you actually see it. It's Lee Naylor's like actually holding, like hugging the guy. But there's one massive incident that happens in this game, and it was the Dida thing. Like, what do you remember from the time? Like,
we had the free match package for that, but we were down the other goal, behind the other goal. So just when McDonald scored, we were going mental, and we didn't notice the guy come on the pitch. So it wasn't till later on we found out about it. But when he went down, you're like, I don't even know what happened to him. Something strange must have happened, because McDonald wasn't even close to him. And then when you see it the next day and later on, you're like, it's the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen in my life. He gets tapped in the neck maybe, and he goes down with an oxygen mask on and gets stretchered off. Oh,
he got subbed. Terrible. He actually got subbed on the 90th minute. Calac comes on and actually subs this fucking idiot. He actually got banned for, he got banned retrospectively.
Yeah, retrospectively, yeah. Quite right. I mean, it was embarrassing. I mean, there's cameras there. Do you not know this? But he's Brazilian, I suppose. So.
Yeah, I suppose you could say it's in their DNA. But I want to read a quote. I was on Kerrydale Street earlier on. I don't know if you use any forums, but I was on Kerrydale Street, the search function. There's a guy that's written. I'm not going to name the guy, but I don't want to embarrass him. But he's talking about the guy that ran onto the pitch. He says, "I hope he's getting badly beaten in a small room. I was absolutely ecstatic when the goal went in, but deflated again immediately when that moron ran on the pitch. I hope anyone that knows him disowns him. What a top-class merchant banker."
Yeah,
I can't even read it without laughing.
It's fair enough. I mean, you're beating the European Cup winners. You've just beaten them, and instead the front pages are about some idiot running on the pitch, and you can't say assaulting the goalkeeper. I mean, it just takes away from it. It was so frustrating, but it's a great result, and I'll always remember it for a result and not some idiot on the pitch. It's more embarrassing for Dida than anybody else, to be honest.
I mean, I do agree with you. The guy that's ran on the pitch is a fucking idiot, and you give the Scottish press sort of any sort of reason to run with a story, they will take it and they will run with it. But Milan were the AC Milan had won the Champions League the season before. This is the season we actually progressed from the Champions League, and we played Barca in the next round. But the manager at this point was Gordon Strachan. I just want to ask you, Gordon Strachan is an interesting manager because he very much divided the support. Like, one of the reasons I started doing this podcast was because I thought there's so many players that divide the support. Like Vennegoor Hesselink was a player that I thought was very good. My mate's like, nah, he was fucking shite. So I thought it'd be good to talk about it. What were your thoughts on Strachan, who divided the support then and now?
Hindsight's a good thing, because at the time when he comes in, like, it'll be the same for the guy that follows Rodgers. It's an impossible task following Martin O'Neill, especially when Larsson, I know Larsson left in O'Neill's first season, but Larsson's away, Sutton, Hartson, Lennon, Lambert, they're all old, and that you can just see in Martin O'Neill's last season, that team was coming to the end of it and it had to be totally redone. And then when he comes in, changes it all about and loses to Bratislava in his first game, I don't think he won back a lot of fans after that. I think he lost them, but he won me round in his first season, and then when he gets into the Champions League, it was good. But towards the end of his reign, in his last season, I don't think I went to one game in his last season, and that's never happened to me as a Celtic fan. It'll probably never happen again. I just couldn't watch the football. That back four just passing it, Naylor, Caldwell, McManus, back across. Oh, it was terrible. But looking back now, he did a great job on the budget he was given. But the big players he seemed to bring in, none of them worked out. I mean, Jarosik and Donati started that game, but they only really played in European games because they never cut it in Scotland. I mean, brings in Thomas Gravesen. Jarosik and Gravesen should be a Premiership midfield. By the end of that season, we had Robson and Hartley in midfield because they weren't playing well at all.
Good point, very, very good point. And Donati today gives away a penalty against Celtic, playing at centre half for Hamilton.
It's always good to see him back.
I think what the biggest problem, two issues that Strachan had was following O'Neill, but also not being Celtic minded, whatever that means. I'm not a big believer of someone has to be Celtic minded, but it does sort of work with some fans. Now Scott McDonald scores that goal in the last minute. I think it's just before. I can't remember if it's before or after the incident with Dida, but Dida spills the goal. Dida spills the shot, and McDonald just snaps it up and scores the goal. Like, where does McDonald...
When he scores, the guy runs onto the pitch and celebrates past him, and that's when he goes down.
Where does McDonald rate in the pantheon of strikers since Larsson? Now, I think it's completely agreed across the board that Dembele is the next heir to the throne. But where does McDonald rate?
Well, Jamie on the podcast, he's calling Dembele the GOAT, so he thinks he's right up there with Larsson. But McDonald, we'd been beaten by Shakhtar away from home in the first game, then this was the second game, so we really needed to get something out of this. And I'd been a sceptic of McDonald because of what he'd done on that dreadful Sunday. But he was up against Nesta that night, and he ran him ragged. That was when I realised he is actually a good player, because you always think he's lazy, but he ran about, he was checking runs, he got offside a lot, but he pulled that defence all over the place that night, and that's when the night I thought he's a good player, and that's when it all changed for me. That goal in the last minute, we went wild, it was brilliant. But I'd say Hooper, Dembele, and probably McDonald since Larsson. That's the top strikers. Maybe Griffiths is in there as well.
And just want to add as well that the AC Milan team that were playing that night was Odo, Nesta, obviously Dida, Bonera, Jankulovski, who was a long-term right-back for AC Milan, Ambrosini, Gattuso, Pirlo, Seedorf, Gurkov came on for Seedorf, who was a great player before he moved to Milan, and subsequently after he was pretty good. Kaká, Inzaghi and Gilardino. And on the bench they had Emerson, Simic, Dario Simic, who was there for fucking ever, Favali and Barocchi. We're talking about like the cream of the crop of AC Milan in recent memory. So we're not talking about, current Milan standards where they've got fucking Keisuke Honda and players that are just not real Milan standards. So this was a massive result.
It's probably the last great Milan team, to be honest. I mean, look, Inzaghi and Kaká, that's absolutely brilliant. Inzaghi was at his peak there as well.
Do you know the word Kaká in Spanish? Do you know what it means?
Nope.
Jobby. Literally.
He's definitely not that. So
literally jobby, not shite, like jobby. So anyway, last question, I guess. One other thing I want to add as well. George Connolly was the guest of honour at this match, which was quite a big deal because George Connolly, from the research in the book that I've read in the podcast that we done, was a very reserved, very nervous guy, and it was a big deal for him to go back to Celtic Park, to be honest. I think that was the first time he was back at Celtic Park.
That's right, aye.
Since he left. And also, I don't think, I'm not sure if he's been back since, so it was a big deal, but that's just a little side note. Last question, Melly, before we wrap up here. What's the best European game you've ever experienced at Celtic Park?
I don't know. I think the Man City one, but I think it's got to be Barcelona. It wasn't the best game, but it was just the feeling at the end, because Barcelona were unbeaten up till then. We didn't have a prayer of winning that game. What was it? 89% possession or something Barca had, and we won the game. Just the end of that game was the best. Was absolutely brilliant. But Valencia, Man City, AC Milan, but Barcelona, the result is the best. Well, I was in Seville, so that's maybe a bit different. I didn't want to talk about that because everybody talks about that, but that was the proudest moment I've ever had in a European game.
Do you have any specific Seville memories that you want to talk about and want to share?
Well, I went myself. I was meeting a mate over there because I had 2 tickets. I bought them before the Liverpool second leg, so I was just praying Celtic get there. If not, hopefully Liverpool do. So I went over myself. I missed my maths exam. I got off a bus and walked across a big bridge in Seville, and I got at the end of the bridge and there was a bottle of Bucky just sitting at the end of the bridge. I was like, what is going on here? But it was just the proudest moment. If you put me in the stadium again, I could probably pick out my seat. I was right beside the Porto fans. I was 2 seats away from the divide, and the divide's a big glass panel, so it was hard at the end of the game hearing them celebrate, but there was a few of them putting their hands over and shaking hands, so it was good to see. But Jose Mourinho broke my heart. He came over just in front of me as well and threw his medal into a crowd of Porto fans. So
bit of a dick.
Yeah, he's a dick, but I have to respect him.
Anyway, so I guess that was your proudest moment as a Celtic fan? Yeah,
easily, but it's going to be everybody's proudest moment, isn't it?
Yeah, so listen, thank you very much for thank you for coming on to the History Boys Abroad Know Your History podcast.
No, thanks for having me, Emma. I like the podcast. The stuff you come up with is great, so it's an absolute honour to be on it.
So you guys are at 20 Minute Tims. Do you want to give your handle as well?
Yeah, I'm at Martin Melly 86.
just want to give a quick roundup to the Hamilton game today. I know it seems like a bit of formality, but we'll talk about it. I've got Liam Scullion, our trusty friend from Dumbarton, who was at the game today. Liam, how you doing?
I'm well, yourself?
Not bad. Kind of sounds like I'm introducing you to like a radio show or something like a phone-in radio show, but no, we're not a radio show. We're just two guys talking on Skype here. So 2-0 Hamilton today. Pretty standard routine win. What do you think?
It was similar to last week, going through the emotions. I thought we played pretty well, considering Hamilton packed the final third of the pitch and just clogged anything that moved in green and white, really.
And I would agree with that. At one point there was about 10 men behind the ball, so it did seem like a bit of a Celtic training exercise at the end, like defence versus attack. I want to ask you about Boyata. What did you think of him?
I thought he played really well today. I thought he was really composed, and his passing was much better this week than it was last week. I thought he was probably one of the better performers on the team.
So, did you see the first minute of the game, or were you still getting to your seat?
I saw the first minute. What did he do? I've obviously not registered that.
44 seconds, he kicks the ball directly at the pitch. Like he passed to Eric, and the ball just went straight out the pitch.
I didn't even note that then.
Like literally, like as I looked at the clock, I was like, I can't believe that's took 44 seconds for the ball to be kicked directly at the pitch. He was in the middle of the pitch near the centre circle, and he kicked it left to Eric, and it was like in between Eric and in between Tierney, but it was too far in between both, and it just went out. I was like, for fuck's sake! But I want to ask you a couple of questions. Like, we're not going to spend long on this because it's another routine win for the Juggernaut. The heavy-handedness, something we were chatting about during the game on WhatsApp. Like, is it real? Is it a genuine thing that managers from opposing teams are just saying to the players, like, just we can't match them, so give them a bit of a down? Is it real?
I think it is. That's 3 games in the trot that teams have came, and their tactic is just hit them in any way or shape or form. And I know you obviously have a better view of the Forest one because you were watching it and you got replays and that, but again, another week, another players just getting clattered into, and this time obviously Forest is a bit more fragile than Tierney and Sinclair, but there you go, he's out injured.
I think it looked worse than it actually was, but I think the tackle sort of, I think from what I took from it, Forrest sort of injured himself. Sorry, if you can hear background noise, it's Carnival in Spain. Carnival is essentially Ash Wednesday, a celebration of Ash Wednesday and Lent and all this sort of stuff. But they have a Mardi Gras type festival. However, if you hear it in the background, I can't stop it. But Forrest, it looked like he injured himself, but the player put in a pretty rough tackle that made him move his leg in a specific way, where he jarred his foot into the ground and sort of like planted, and then sort of, I don't know, like it jarred his foot, and then that was it. He was taken off, and I don't think the player actually connected with him, but I think the player had made such a the Hamilton player like almost like attacked him physically, but he pulled out at the last minute, and then the rest was history. And Forrest was, I've read a little bit of Twitter afterwards, I have read a little bit of social media afterwards. I haven't heard if there's a long-term injury. I don't really know what it is. Hopefully it's just precautionary, because as we spoke about last week, Forrest has been doing pretty well, even though we slated him 2 weeks ago. The benefit of hindsight and replays and stuff like that. But the first half, up until the goals, was very, very insipid.
Yes, it was. It was just like I say, Hamilton put everybody behind the ball, and it was just a pretty hard thing to break down. I thought Hamilton played for what their job was. One was to obviously press and be aggressive about it. I thought they went about it really well. They you had McKinnon in the middle of the park was obviously there. He was man Martin Brown. Everywhere Brown went, he went. And obviously Daz is a bit of a hard man himself. So the two of them had a good tussle. But any time a Celtic player was on his own, there was at least 2 Hamilton players on him. So you need to give credit to Hamilton for doing their job. But the thuggerish ways are not so welcome. Rodgers
did allude to that. There was a kind of a contradiction with what he said last week and what he said this week. He sort of gave the player a reprieve that made the tackle on Tierney because of the pitch, and then he said there's been a lot of heavy tackles specifically on Tierney and on Sinclair. But it seemed today like they just continued on and just like were battering Celtic up and down the pitch. Celtic TV commentary team were quick to condemn them as well. Rodgers was talking about how there was a bit of chat about how Celtic play better away from home. Like we tend to play better away from home because the pitches away from home are normally better than Celtic's pitches. The much talked about the famous shite pitch that we have now. But when I was thinking about it, I was looking at the results and stuff like that. Like Celtic have scored, I don't know, like we beat Inverness 6-0 the other week. We beat Hearts 4-0 the other week. We beat Rangers 5-1 earlier on the season. We're scoring a lot of goals at home and a lot of goals away from home. It just seems like I don't know. Like obviously Rodgers being a perfectionist, it's going to need to be addressed, but I don't really see it as being that big an issue. Do you think it's a big issue?
The pitch, well, I don't know. Like obviously you don't see it as close up as I do, and I think it looks atrocious for obviously Celtic Park. It's like one of the things that's been notorious at Celtic Park is the pitch has always been immaculate from start to finish of the season. So I think it will have a slight bearing on what the way Rodgers wants the team to play, but it's a small excuse for not achieving what he wants, I would say, at the same time. Because the players should be good enough to perform in any pitch. He's
absolutely striving for perfection. And this is something that I've noted during the week. People are complaining about Beaton. We're on this ridiculous run and people are still complaining. Like, I'm like that.
I'm going to say Beaton was, again, I felt he was one of the better performers today. So
it's a funny game that you see and that I see. Like, I feel that I was speaking to Melly about this, and I feel that I feel that Beaton probably hasn't progressed as a player at Celtic. Like, his ability has not really improved massively. If anything, he's sort of regressed. I just don't feel like he's improved as a player. Rodgers said this week that Bhoys is 2 weeks away from being matchday squad material, so you're going to see him bled in throughout the remainder of the season. But I just feel that I don't want to contradict what I'm saying here by saying people are moaning and stuff like that, but I felt today Beaton could be wasteful. There was a couple of times he does see a lot of the ball, Beaton, but he's very wasteful with the ball, and he always puts himself in for a tackle. I don't know if you've noticed this, but he's quite a physical player, but more often than not he doesn't come away with the ball. Now, I just want to say one more thing about Beaton. I don't know if you ever saw the highlight reel of Beaton when he played with Manchester City. He played like 2 or 3 bounce games with Man City as a trialist. Did you ever see the highlights package?
Aye, he looked like
he looked like fucking. He looked like Makaleli. He was breaking up the play. His tackling was superb. So I thought amazing. But then, like, when I'm looking at him today, I was like, you're going into a lot of tackles and you're putting yourself about. And he's not afraid. He's a big gangly guy, but he's quite tough. But he goes in for these tackles and he's putting himself about. But more often than not, he's not winning the ball like he had. I just feel as a player of the past 3 years or however long he's been with Celtic, he hasn't really progressed as a player.
I know what you're saying, but I think he slightly plays within himself, and I think he thinks that he's part of it is maybe he thinks he's too good, and therefore doesn't exert himself. But then again, that's just his repertoire. Like, he's, like we said the other week, he's like pretty much that laid back that he's horizontal. So
Pepe Le Pew, he is the Pepe Le Pew of Celtic Football Club. Like, he just plays the game at his own pace. So I don't know. He's a very interesting player, like, in that sense, because he doesn't really seem to play any other rhythm apart from the rhythm that he decides. But he's in it. He as I said to Melly, I think that he's going to do a job till the summer. I think Gary Mackay-Steven, like, what did you think of him?
Apart from when we went 2-0 up and Hamilton started to come out a wee bit more, he wasn't in the game. And I think surely there's a player younger that could do a better job. Like, a prime example would probably be Aidan Nisbet on loan at Morton.
Potentially. Yeah, I don't think that he. I would even think that I potentially think that he never even touched the ball within the first 20 minutes of coming off the bench and coming onto the pitch. He was just very. He was a pedestrian. It was like something was just plucked out the crowd and just put onto the pitch. He wasn't very good at all. Second half, as you say, when the game opened up a bit more, they sat back a bit more. He came on and he opened up the defence a couple of times. But I mean, he is a squad player. But we're now kind of down to the bare bones of wingers, and like Rodgers likes a winger. Sinclair plays where he plays, but Roberts is carrying an injury. Forrest, who knows? Mackay-Steven, I just don't feel that he is going to be the answer. I think Beaton will be shipped out in the summer.
I would probably agree with that. I wouldn't be surprised if those two went. I kind of think Mackay-Steven's probably been told that he's probably going. I'm sure there's probably a few others, but you just need to wait and see.
He probably doesn't even know. He's probably just smiling like, that's fine, aye, cool. No worries, aye, it's fine, aye, it's cool. I'll play, aye. He's every time he comes on, he's got this like fucking bobbly head, like he's at the back of someone's car. You know, those fucking stupid dogs that you get. He's just like, I mean, I'm not going to slag the guy because there's no reason to slag him. I just don't feel that he's good enough. I just feel that he's not good enough to even be a squad player. couple of flashes today, or not even flashes, just a couple of moments. However, Christian Gamboa,
I think he's a great player. He's
great's pushing it a pinch, but
okay.
I do
he's
think
a good player.
He's an adequate, more than adequate. He's the word that came to my mind as watching it was secure. He's a secure, absolute secure player to play when Lustig is needing to lie down or whatever Lustig needs to do.
Just be the man.
I just like kicking about, taking fashion shots and like looking gallus with his tattoos and stuff like that. But I think Gamboa today, I don't remember him making any mistakes at all. I don't recall any mistakes by him. Like Boyata made some mistakes, Sviatchenko made mistakes. Thought Tierney was great today again. Tierney's just at a level of consistency that not many players will reach when they play for Celtic, and this guy's not even 20 yet. Scott Brown, it's a relatively quiet game for the standard he's set. However, he was very, very good today. A question I asked Melly, who's the best penalty taker you've ever seen at Celtic?
Barry Robson.
Nah, fuck off. Dembele is pinpoint. Dembele, you can
I
put...
what to say, Dembele.
Aye, well, he said Dembele as well, and then he spoke about other people, but it's difficult to agree. It's difficult to disagree with Dembele. Larson missed a few. Sutton took some.
Larson got the penalties taken off him because he kept missing.
Aye, so yeah, it's
Dembele. Probably Commons hit a decent penalty as well.
That's true, but it seems to be that Dembele in the past 20 years is definitely one of the best penalty takers that we've had. Like, he doesn't even like take 2 or 3. I think he takes like 1 or 2 steps up to the penalty spot and hits the ball. It just seems a little bit easy for him. I don't know if you noticed this, but when the players were coming off, like one thing I noticed with when Armstrong got subbed, I thought Armstrong was quite jaded today. I didn't think he was up to much. But when he came off, I know he's come back from injury, so that's okay. But when he came off, Rodgers spoke to him for about 30 seconds as he came off the pitch, like in his ear before he even got to the dugout. He'd just been subbed, and the camera just focused, and you could see it. And I don't know if he stayed to the end. You can pretend that you're not one of these guys that leaves early, Liam, and saying that you stayed to the end. But if you watch it to the very, very end of Celtic TV, Rodgers went out around every single player and had a word in their ear. He even had a word and gave a big hug to Daz McKinnon, who's, I know, is he from Dumbarton?
Aye, from Dumbarton, big time.
So like Rodgers gave him a massive hug and then like spoke to him for a couple of seconds on the pitch. Like Rodgers went round every single player, and then the last person to leave the pitch, which seems to be the way now, is Rodgers. He goes to the Green Brigade, he does a bit of a lap, goes to Green Brigade, and then off he comes. So he seems like this personal touch that he has with players, and this is what I was saying to Melly. Like, we were talking about how the effect that he's had compared to someone like Dyla is that like people respect him and people will listen to him and people will take on what he says. Would you agree with that?
100%. Aye. Like, there was a bit of a false hope with Dyla, the Ronnie Rower, and you kind of thought, okay, this is it, but obviously it wasn't. But the way Rodgers conducts himself, like at the pitch side during the game, obviously after the games, like the way he does approach every player on the park, pretty much like you say, like how he spoke to McKinnon. Like, I've noticed there is other players of the opposition that he's been up and spoke to them before. He just seems to respect everybody and gets respect back.
He is some man. He is above and beyond everything that we expect this season. Did you expect this season to finish here? Like, did you expect this season to go as well as it has been going?
No. Firstly, I didn't expect us to get in the Champions League. I expected us to win the league, but not pretty much have it wrapped up by now. And 1 or 2 cups. I know we're still a long way to go in the Scottish Cup, but you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to do a treble, aren't you? You would think that, unless some kind of black cloud comes down and ruins it all, but I can't really see it happening.
See, when you say black cloud, do you mean the SFA? And see, when you say SFA, do you mean Huns?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. So, like, just to give those that do not know, like, where Celtic stands on the 25th of February 2017, Celtic are 76 points, Aberdeen are 52, the Rangers are 43. 33 points ahead of the guys that call themselves Rangers. 33 points ahead.
Well, they're closer to Hamilton than they are us, so
Exactly. Hamilton are bottom of the table.
Even Aberdeen are in the same boat, are they not?
Aberdeen are... I never actually realised now, Aberdeen are 9 points clear of Rangers. I never even realised that. That's massive. That's absolutely massive.
I know it's a Celtic podcast, don't want to talk about them, but they get a bit of luck today with St Johnstone and Hearts both losing. But hey ho, we'll leave that there.
Well, St Johnstone are on 37. And everyone has played the same amount of games. But so, anyway, so 2 more things before we finish. The next game we have is Inverness away on Wednesday night. Not a good game for the fans, but Inverness away on Wednesday night. Personally, I think Rodgers will have the team completely up for it because they know that we lost the points, stupidly lost the points up there in September or whenever we dropped the points. But secondly, just to continue that run, like it's massive now. We're like close to breaking so many records. I think there's even a world record that can be broken.
I don't know anything about this. You'll know that better than me, but that's news to me.
No, I'm going with what the homeboys had said, and they said there was a world record that had been broken, but then they spent about 10 minutes trying to deliberate.
Is it like the points total?
No, it's like wins in a trot.
Is it wins in a trot? So what we on? Are we on
25, something like that?
I thought it was
something like that.
20s, aye.
So anyway, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is, personally, we don't lose on Wednesday. We beat St Mirren next weekend. After that, we have the Rangers game, which should take care of itself. Because let's be honest. Let's be honest. You said on a previous podcast, if you take our team and take their team and take it away from Celtic and Rangers and put them side by side, Celtic are head and shoulders miles above what they have. They are essentially a Motherwell, a Ross County. They are nothing what anyone in the Scottish media or any of their fans hyped them up to be. They're just they're fodder. They're absolute fodder. But I don't like talking about them at all. I don't see the point in it. But one last thing to mention before we wrap up here: Craig Gordon, his contract is stalled until the summer. Do you renew or do you punt?
I would. It's a tough one because if you've got somebody better, then you would take them, but I would renew. I think you give them another 2 years. But with that option, I'll obviously try to find somebody.
The chat is 4 years, and he'll be 34, 35.
Same age as us now, is he know? So he's 34 now, is he know?
I'm 21. I'm 21.
With your new haircut.
Less of that. This is an anonymous podcast. Looking like he's 17 here. But yeah, so personally, we'll see what happens in the summer. Brendan Rodgers made the point about, contract situations are not resolved with the snap of our fingers. So we'll see how it goes. But personally, if it gets to the summer and nothing has been resolved, I don't really have any qualms with trying to bring someone new in. The problem that we had with Chelsea coming in was it was during this run, during this domestic fucking assault that we're on just now. I had an issue with that, but when it comes to summer, it's a different ball game altogether. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, the march goes on, Liam. The march goes on. So Wednesday night, I take it, obviously you're not going to Inverness on a Wednesday night, on a school night?
No.
So we're back. You going to the St Mirren match next weekend?
I am going to that, yes.
Right. So we will be back on this podcast the weekend of Celtic versus the Rangers. The next podcast is going to be Craig Bellamy, the impact that he had during his short time as a Celtic player. Gilly has been given permission to join me for that podcast. He requested that specifically, so I assume that he's ran it by his boss and stuff like that to see if he can come out and play. Following up to that, we're going to have Christian Wolfe coming on, and hopefully Paul John Dykes, and then a couple other things in the pipeline. But I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Liam, what is your handle?
At Liam M. Scullion.
Let's be honest, are you getting more hits from this?
I've never noticed. I don't think no.
Our podcast, our Twitter handle, everyone kind of knows the Twitter handles. It's at Boys Abroad. If you want to send us an email, you can send an email at historyboys@gmail.com. That's BHOYS. So the march continues, the juggernaut moves on, Dembele scores again, yada yada yada. Thanks for joining us. Hail, hail.
Oriental dress, the one you love is a mess. White lights, it's all a dream, lost in the fire. This golden obsession, music in my heart, deep in my eyes, dancing from the opium. In a perfect world where nothing dies. Broken glass on the bottom of my heels. Oriental dress, the one you love is a mess. It's all a dream. Passing of time, she's just a child. To recover long-lasting beauty, she will die young. She's just a normal girl, dancing to her favorite